Peace and blessings to the 12 tribes of Israel. Today I'm going to deal with a Bible share called David's Adultery. Now, David was a man after the Most High's own heart. He loved him. He loved David. But David made mistakes too. Right? He wasn't perfect. David made mistakes, but generally the Lord loved him. David repented for his mistakes and the Lord sought to love him. But however, there was consequences for David's decision to commit adultery. Because what King David did was despicable. And I'm going to go through the things that he did and some of the things that happened as a result of his adultery. Right? Now, lots of people think, oh, well, I can do wickedness and I could just pray and the Lord is just going to forget about it and then it's finished. No, there's consequences for your actions. The Lord will judge you and he will dish out the judgment according to the things that you've done in your flesh. Okay, so let's go to 2 Samuel 11. And we're going to read from 1 to 27. And it came to pass after the year was expired at the time when kings go forth to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel, and they destroyed the children of Ammon and besieged Rabbah, and David tarried still at Jerusalem. And it came to pass in a evening tide that David arose from off his bed and walked upon the roof of the king's house, and from the roof he saw a woman washing herself, and the woman was very beautiful to look upon. Right, so let's read 2 again. And it came to pass in the evening tide, so that's the evening, that David arose from off his bed. Right, so he came off his bed and walked upon the roof of the king's house. He walked upon the roof of the king's house, and from the roof he saw a woman washing herself, and the woman was very beautiful to look upon. And David sent and he inquired after the woman, and one said, is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Elam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? Right, so it was Bathsheba was bathing. And David sent messages and took her, and she came in unto him, and he lay with her. But she was purified from her uncleanness, and she returned unto her house. So he committed adultery with Bathsheba. And the woman conceived and sent and told David and said, I am with child. And David sent to Joab, saying, Send me Uriah and the Hittite. And Joab sent Uriah to David. And when Uriah was come unto him, David demanded of him how Joab did, and how the people did, and how the war prospered. And David said to Uriah, Go down to thy house and wash thy feet. And Uriah departed out of the king's house, and there followed him a mess of meat from the king. But Uriah slept at the door of the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and went not down to his house. And when they had told David, saying, Uriah went not down unto his house, David said unto Uriah, Camest thou not from thy journeys? Why then did thou not go down unto thine house? And Uriah said unto David, The ark and Israel and Judea abide in tents, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are encamped in the open fields. Should I then go into mine house to eat and drink and lie with my wife, as thou livest and as thy soul liveth? I will not do this thing. But David said to Uriah, Tarry here today also and tomorrow, and I will let thee depart. So Uriah abode in Jerusalem that day and tomorrow. And when David had called him, he did eat and drink before him, and he made him drunk. And at evening he went out to lie on his bed with the servants of his lord, and went not down to his house. And it came to pass in the morning that David wrote a letter to Joab, and sent it by the hand of Uriah. And he wrote in the letter, saying, Set ye Uriah in the forefront of the hottest battle, and retire ye from him, that he may be smitten and die. Right, so David committed adultery with Uriah's wife. He told him, just stay here for the night. And then now he's trying to set him up so that he can go to battle and die. And it came to pass when Joab observed the city, that he assigned Uriah unto a place where he knew that valiant men were. And the men of the city went out and fought with with Job. And there fell some of the people of the servants of David, and Uriah the Hittite died also. Then Job sent and told David all the things concerning the war, and charged the messenger, saying, When thou hast made an end of telling the matters of the war unto the king, and if so be that the king's wrath arise, and he say unto thee, Wherefore approach ye so nigh unto city when ye did fight? Knew ye not that they would shoot from the wall? Who smote Abimelech the son of Jerubbaal? Did not a woman cast a piece of millstone upon him from the wall, that he died in Tabiz? Why went ye nigh the wall? Then say thou, thy servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also. So they died, basically. So the messenger went and came and showed David all that Job had sent him for. And the messenger said unto David, Surely the men prevailed against us, and came out unto us into the field, and we were upon them, even unto the entering of the gate. And the shooters shoot from off the wall upon thy servants, and some of the king's servants be dead, and thy servant Uriah the Hittite dead also. Then David said unto the messenger, Thus shalt thou say unto Job, Let not this thing displease thee, for the sword devoureth one as well as another. Make thy battle more strong against the city, and overthrow it, and encourage thou him. And when the wife of Uriah heard that Uriah her husband was dead, she mourned for her husband. That's Bathsheba. And when the morning was past, David sent and fetched her to his house, and she became his wife, and bare him a son. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. So he went in unto her, and he took her as his wife, right? So that displeased the Lord, because he wasn't supposed to commit adultery with Bathsheba against Uriah. And then what he did, he hatched a plan whereby he prevented Uriah from going home, sent him off to battle to die, knowingly that he would die with other men. And then now he took his wife afterwards, right? So that was a wicked thing. So he tried to cover his adultery, right? And then he killed the man off. He sent him to war to die with other men to hide his adultery. So obviously that was not right. So let's read 2 Samuel 12:1. And the Lord sent Nathan unto David, and he came unto him, saying unto him, There were two men in one city, the one rich and the other poor. The rich man had exceedingly many flocks and herds. Right, so what I needed to get from that was Nathan, the prophet, was sent to David, right? So we're now going to go to 7. So we're going to skip down to 7, and we're going to read from 7 to 25. And Nathan said to David, Thou art the man. Thus said the Lord God of Israel, I anointed thee king over Israel, and I delivered thee out of the hand of Saul. And I gave thee thy master's house, and thy master's wives into thy bosom, and gave thee the house of Israel, of Judah. And if that had been too little, I would moreover have given unto thee such and such things. Wherefore hast thou despised the commandments of the Lord to do evil in his sight? Thou hast killed Uriah the Hittite. So this is Nathan the prophet speaking to King David. He's saying, You killed Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and hast taken his wife to be thy wife, and hast slain him with the sword of the children of Ammon. Now therefore the sword shall never depart from thine house, because thou hast despised me, and hast taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be thy wife. Thus said the Lord, Behold, I would raise up an evil against thee out of thine own house. Right? So the Lord is saying, I'm going to raise up an evil within your own family. And I will take thy wives before thine eyes, and give them unto thy neighbour, and he shall lie with thy wives in the sight of this sun. For thou didst it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel, and before the sun. And David said unto Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. And Nathan said unto David, The Lord also hath put away thy sin, shall not die. Howbeit, because by his deed thou hast given great occasion to the enemies of the Lord to blaspheme, the child also that is born unto thee shall surely die. Right? So Bathsheba was with child. And Nathan departed unto his house, and the Lord struck the child that Uriah's wife bore unto David, and it was very sick. David therefore besought God for the child, and David fasted and went in and lay all night upon the earth. And the elders of his house arose and went to him to raise him up from earth, but he would not, neither did he eat bread with them. It came to pass on the seventh day the child died. Right, so his child died. So that was the beginning of his punishment. And the servants of David feared to tell him that the child was dead. For they said, Behold, while the child was yet alive, we spoke unto him, and he would not hearken unto our voice. How will he then vex himself if we tell him that the child is dead? And when David saw that his servants whispered, David perceived that the child was dead. Therefore David said unto his servants, Is the child dead? And they said, He is dead. Then David arose from the earth and washed and anointed himself and changed his apparel, came into the house of the Lord, worshipped. Then he came to his own house. And when he required, they set out. And when they required, they set bread before him and did eat. Then said his servants unto him, What thing is this that thou hast done, that thou didst fast and weep for the child while it was alive, but when the child was dead, thou didst rise and eat bread, right? So David is like, oh my God, I'm in trouble. The Lord has punished me. And he said, while the child was yet alive, I fasted and wept. But I said, who can tell whether God will be gracious to me that the child may live? But now he is dead. Wherefore should I fast? Can I bring him back again? I shall go to him, but he shall not return to me. And David comforted Bathsheba his wife, and went in unto her, and lay with her, and she bore a son, and he called his name Solomon. And the Lord loved him. And he sent by the hand of Nathan the prophet, and he called his name Jedidiah, or Jedidiah, because of the Lord. Okay, so his son the first son he had with Bathsheba died. So that was the punishment that came upon David, right? So what we're going to do now, we are going to read some more punishments. So we're going to read 2 Samuel 13. And we're going to read we're going to stay in 2 Samuel 13, but we'll keep skipping bits until we get to 33, right? So we're reading 2 Samuel 13, we're reading from 1 to 2. So this is about his other grown-up children, and because there's other things that happened as a consequence of his adultery, right? So we're reading 2 Samuel 13, we're reading from 1 to 2. And it came to pass after this that Absalom, the son of David, had a fair sister whose name was Tamar. Fair just means she was very pretty. And Amnon, the son of David, loved her. So she was loved by her own brother. And Amnon was so vexed that he fell sick for his sister Tamar, but she was a virgin. And Amnon thought it hard for him to do anything to her. Right? So he wanted his sister. Right? Which is pretty evil, actually. Pretty disgusting. So let's skip down to 10. And Amnon said unto Tamar, bring the meat into the chamber. So she was a very upstanding sister. She was a virgin. As you can imagine, she probably was very pretty and very submissive. 10. And Amnon said unto Tamar, bring the meat into the chamber that I may eat of thine hand. And Tamar took the cakes which she had made and brought them into the chamber to Amnon, her brother. And when she had brought them unto him to eat, he took hold of her and said unto her, come lie with me, my sister. And she answered him, nay, my brother, do not force me, for in no such thing ought to be done in Israel. Do not thou this folly, right? So because he was just about to take her sexually, and he is her brother. So that's obviously disgusting. And she answered him, nay, my brother, do not force me, for in no such thing ought to be done in Israel. Do not thou this folly. And whither shall I cause my shame to go? And as for thee, thou shalt be as one of the fools in Israel. Now therefore I pray thee, speak unto the king, for he will not withhold me from thee. Howbeit he would not hearken unto her voice, but being stronger than she, forced her and lay with her. So he raped his own sister. And then Amnon hated her exceedingly, so that the hatred wherewith he hated her was greater than the love wherewith he had loved her. And Amnon said unto her, arise, be gone. Right, so he used her for sex. That's his own sister, which is quite despicable. And then he hated her afterwards, right? As you can imagine, that's pretty disgusting. How would you feel afterwards, right? It's a horrible thing to do. And that is the power of lust. That's when you harbor lust in your spirit. Your lust goes into some crazy places. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you start lusting after your sister, because let's face it, most people don't, right? They more so get annoyed with their sister. They don't think of their sister in a sexual way, right? Now, what we're going to do, we're going to read from 19 to 22. And Tamar, which is his sister, put ashes on her head, and rent her garment of diverse colours that was on her, and laid her hand on her head, and went on crying. And Absalom her brother said unto her, Had Amnon thy brother been with thee, and hold now thy peace? My sister, he is thy brother, regard not this thing. So Tamar remained desolate in her brother Absalom's house. But when King David heard of all these things, he was very wroth. And Absalom spoke unto his brother Amnon, neither good nor bad, for Absalom hated Amnon because he had forced his sister Tamar. Because how are you supposed to look upon your own brother as a brother when he rapes, well, both of you, sister? I mean, that's just disgusting, right? So we're going to read from 27 to 33. But Absalom pressed him that he let Amnon and all the king's sons go with him. Now Absalom had commanded his servants, saying, Mark ye now when Amnon's heart is merry with wine, when he's drunk. And when I say unto you, smite Amnon, then kill him. Fear not, have not I commanded you, be courageous and be valiant. So he's instructing his men to kill him. And the servants of Absalom did unto Amnon as Absalom had commanded. Then all the king's sons arose, and every man gat him up upon his mule and fled. And it came to pass, while they were in the way, that tidings came to David, saying, Absalom hath slain all the king's sons, and there is none, not one of them left. Then the king arose and tear his garments, and lay on the earth, and all the servants stood by with their clothes rent. And Jonadab, the son of Shimei, David's brother, answered and said, Let not my lord suppose that they had slain all the young men, the king's sons, for Amnon only is dead. For by the appointment of Absalom, this had been determined from the day that he forced his sister Tamar. So only Amnon died, because that's what it looks like, right? So let's read a bit again. Have slain on young men of the king's sons, for Amnon only is dead. So this is Jonadab, the son of Shimei, David's brother, right? So that's, I suppose that would be his nephew. Answered and said, Let not my lord suppose that they have slain all the young men, the king's sons, for Amnon only is dead. For by the appointment of Absalom, this had been determined from the day that he forced his sister Tamar. So only Amnon was killed. Now therefore let not my lord the king take the thing to his heart, to think that all the king's sons are dead, for Amnon only is dead. So he's reiterating that only Amnon was dead. So this is the chain of things that happened after David committed adultery with Bathsheba. Now, just to add a little bit more onto David's adultery and the consequences of what a chain of consequences that happened afterwards, we're going to read 2 Samuel 16, and we're going to read from 20 to 23. So this is about Absalom, his son, and his son slept with his concubines, right? So his son slept with his wives. So that was another chain of events that happened because of David's adultery with Bathsheba. So let's read about it. So 2 Samuel 16, and we're going to read from 20 to 23. Then said Absalom to Ahithophel, Give counsel among you when we shall do. And Ahithophel said unto Absalom, Go in unto thy father's concubines, which he hath left to keep the house, and all Israel shall hear that thou art abhorred of thy father. Then shall the hands of all that are with thee be strong. So they spread Absalom a tent upon the top of the house, and Absalom went in unto his father's concubines in the sight of all of Israel. So he slept with his father's wives, right, which is pretty disgusting. And the counsel of Ahithophel, which he counselled in those days, was, if a man had inquired at the oracle of God, so was all the counsel of Ahithophel, both with David and with Absalom, right? So Basically, he got the wrong counsel, because who would give counsel to sleep with your father's wives? That's a horrible thing to do. And for a son to even think about doing it, that's horrible too. So this is another chain of events that happened because of David's adultery with Bathsheba, right? So David may have been remorseful, and he may have thought, well, I made a really terrible decision. I love the Lord. Lord, please forgive me. And he may have been very, very remorseful about it. But there's consequences need to happen. Because the Lord can't just forget about it. He still needs to punish you. And that's the problem, that a lot of people think they can just say a prayer and then it magically disappears. Right? No, there's still consequences for your actions. You still have to pay for what you've done. Right? The Bible says that the Lord chastises those that he loves. Right? So, let's go to Psalms 51. So we read in Psalms 51 and we're going to read from 1 to 15. So this is what David has been saying, right? Because he obviously begged the Lord for forgiveness, right? Because the Bible does say that he was a man after the Lord's own heart, right? In the New Testament. So he may have, and obviously he wrote Psalms, right? So he was the man that the Lord loves, right? So here is the prayer that he prayed about his shortcomings, about his sins. So Psalms 51. So it says, the chief magician is Psalms of David, where Nathan the prophet came unto him after he had gone into Bathsheba. So this is what he was praying when he made that mistake of committing adultery and killing her husband. Have mercy upon me, O God, according to thy loving kindness, according unto the multitude of thy tender mercies. Blot out my transgressions. Wash me thoroughly from mine iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. I acknowledge my transgression, and my sin is ever before me. Against thee only have I sinned and done this evil in thy sight, that thou mayest be justified when thou speakest, and be clear with thou judges. Behold, I was shapen in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me. Behold, thou desirest truth in the inward parts, and in the hidden part thou shalt make me to know wisdom. Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. Make me to hear joy and gladness, that the bones which thou hast broken may rejoice. Hide thy face from my sins, and blot out all my iniquities. Create in me a clean heart, O God, renew a right spirit within me. Cast me not away from thine presence. Take not thy Holy Spirit from me. Restore unto me the joy of thy salvation. Uphold me from thy free spirit. Then will I teach transgressors, thy ways, and sinners shall be converted unto thee. Deliver me from blood guiltiness. O God, my salvation. My tongue shall sing aloud thy righteousness. And we'll go into 15. O Lord, open thou my lips, and my mouth shall show forth thy praise. So this is the prayer that he said when Nathan the prophet came to him after he committed adultery against Uriah, right? And he committed adultery with Bathsheba. So he's praying to the Lord for forgiveness. So let's go to one last scripture. We're going to go to Romans 7. Here, ready, go. Know ye not, brethren, for I speak to them that I know the law, how that the law hath dominion over a man as long as he liveth. For the woman which had a husband is bound by the law to her husband as long as he liveth. But if a husband be dead, she is loose from the law of her husband, so that if while her husband liveth, she be married to another man, she shall be called an adulteress. But if her husband be dead, she is free from the law, so that she is no more adulteress, or no adulteress, though she be married to another man. Right, so it says, know ye not, brethren, for I speak to them that I know the law, that the law hath dominion over a man as long as he liveth. For the woman which hath a husband is bound by the law to her husband as long as he liveth. So if a woman marries a man, she cannot go and marry another man, right? That is, it goes into being defiled, right? Because the Lord never made a woman to have multiple husbands, right? Where you go from one husband to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, as they do today. You have whores that go from one man to the next. They think they're men, right? They think they are bad boys. So they go from one man to the next. And that's whoredom, right? That's evil, before the eyes of the Lord. Right? So it says, for the woman which had a husband is bound by the law as long as her husband. And by the way, marriage is not when you go to the government to get a license, or you go to ask them, please, can I get married, please? And then they sit on it for 6 weeks or 2 months, and then they come back and say, okay, well, you can. Right? That's not really what the Bible is talking about. The Bible says, who God put together, let no man put asunder. Whoever you sleep with is your wife, and whoever the woman sleeps with is her husband. Right? So it says, for the woman had a husband is bound by the law to a husband as long as he liveth. But if the husband be dead, she's loose from the law of her husband. So then if while her husband liveth, she's married to another man, she shall be called an adulteress. Because if while the husband is still alive, she's married to another man, that is adultery. Right? And if her husband be dead, she is free from the laws. So if he is dead, right? So if she's married to him, he died, she's free, right? She can go and be another man's wife because her first husband is not alive anymore. So that she is no more adultery. She's not committing adultery because a woman needs a husband, right? She needs a head. Though she be married to another man. Though she be married to another man. So that's the New Testament commandments in terms of adultery. Now, obviously, in the Old Testament, people who committed adultery were stoned, right? So adultery was a very, very serious sin to commit, right? So David did something very, very harsh, and the Most High judged him harshly for what he did. So the judgment was that his son from the adultery died, and his daughter got raped by her own brother, and then his son Amnon was killed by the authority of his brother Absalom, right? So that's the chain of things that happened. But the Lord had mercy upon King David. Because why? Because he generally was obedient to the Most High. He did what the Most High wanted. Brothers and sisters, I hope you were edified. Shalom.